Hey guys, welcome back to Econ class. Today we're going to be talking about the monopoly market structure and everything that it deals with. Our objectives for today: identify the characteristics of monopoly markets, identify the barriers to entry, the things that keep a monopoly as a monopoly. We're going to illustrate and analyze monopoly models. We're going to be able to understand the relationship between the marginal revenue and the demand curves. We're going to be able to explain the cause of the inefficient market outputs, why it's not producing at an allocative efficient amount. And then we're going to be able to identify corrective policies to fix or correct that deadweight loss that we see in the market. Let's start by introducing the model that we're going to be looking at for the monopoly market structure. Now, we have a marginal cost curve, we have a ATC curve. These are just the same as a perfectly competitive market. Now, where we start to see a difference is when we look at the demand curve. Compared to the perfectly elastic demand curve that we see in a perfectly competitive market, we're looking at a downward sloping demand. This is because the monopoly controls the entire market. And because of this downward sloping demand curve, we're going to have a marginal revenue curve that diverges from the demand curve. They still produce at MR equals MC. That's still where we get our profit maximizing quantity of output. We get our price from the demand curve at profit maximizing quantity of output. We get the ATC from that same quantity. And profits are going to be the same. Everything above ATC, but below the price at profit maximizing. Now, a couple other points to point out. Allocative efficiency, where marginal cost equals price. We've got our deadweight loss, and this is a unique characteristic with the monopoly model, is because we're not producing at allocative efficiency like with a perfectly competitive market. Our productive efficiency down there where marginal cost equals ATC, and we have another new point that's of interest, the point where marginal revenue equals zero, and this is going to be our revenue maximizing quantity of output. Now, a monopoly has a few characteristics that provide for its unique market structure. It is the sole provider of a product in a given market. There's nobody else producing it. One company controls the entire market, so they also get to control the price, making them the price maker, unlike the perfect competitor who is the price taker. Now, they maintain sole control over these markets because of the different barriers to entry. Now, it might be caused by a regulation, some sort of copyright or patent that was put on a given product, much like the pharmaceutical industry. Or they might control the resources. Maybe there's some unique resource that needs to be used in this product, like the diamond market. Or the production process. Maybe there's a unique way that they produce a given good that only one company knows, so nobody else can compete. Now, the last barrier to entry is what we call economies of scale. So these are referred to as natural monopolies. Because of their low cost of production, other firms cannot get in, the low average total cost, or maybe if it has an extremely high startup. The energy industry, producing electricity, it's an extremely high startup cost. So in a lot of cases, they act as a natural monopoly, and new firms cannot get in to compete against them. It's the idea of the economies of scale, the decreasing average total cost as they expand production, hitting that minimum efficient scale. Being at the lowest possible cost in a given industry, it prohibits other firms from joining in. Now, the biggest difference between a perfectly competitive firm and a monopoly firm is that the monopoly has a downward sloping demand curve. Now, this is due to the fact that they control the entire market. So the demand for the firm is also the demand for the market. In order for a monopoly to sell more, they're not just accepting the market price, they are the market, so they have to drop the price to sell more. So our marginal revenue curve falls below. So we still have a marginal cost curve. We're still going to produce at MC equals MR. That's our profit maximizing quantity. So we produce at MC equals MR, but we still get our price from the demand curve. Now, sometimes understanding that demand and marginal revenue curves are different from one another is a hard concept for students to grasp. So I've included a practice worksheet down in the description below. So take some time to go over that, hit pause, and then continue on so we can go over it. We're going to start this worksheet at the price of $14. At $14, we are selling 0 products. If we drop the price down to $13, we sell 1. So $13 in total revenue. That means our marginal revenue by dropping the price from $14 to $13 is $13. We've gained $13 extra dollars in revenue. I drop it down to $12. Now I'm selling 2. I got $24 in total revenue. I've only increased my revenue by $11 by dropping that price. Now the reason the marginal revenue isn't the same as the price is because we had to drop the price down. We were making 13 before, we dropped it down, we're only making 11 extra dollars by selling that second item. We can't charge the people different prices in a single price monopoly. We drop it down to 11, we're at $33 total revenue, marginal revenue is 9. Drop it down to 10, marginal revenue is 7. Drop it down to $9, and marginal revenue is only 5. The extra revenue we are getting keeps going down further and further. We go down to 8 units, or $8, we sell 6 units, and I'm only getting 3 extra dollars. Drop it down to 7, I'm only getting 1 extra dollar by dropping that price. By getting that 7th unit sold, I'm only getting 1 extra dollar in revenue. Now, as we drop down to $6, we are hitting the inelastic portion of the demand curve because our marginal revenue is negative, meaning my total revenue actually went down. Price decrease, total revenue went down, we've encountered the inelastic portion of the demand curve. And this is going to continue on throughout the rest of the demand curve. So keep in mind, these are the reasons why demand and marginal revenue are separate curves for the monopoly market structure. The type of monopoly we're looking at in this video is considered a single price monopoly. That's because they charge one price for all their consumers. There's also a perfectly price discriminating monopoly, which we'll look at in the next video. But the idea here is that in order to sell more, price must be lower for all consumers. They want to drop the price in order to sell more product. So marginal revenue is always below the demand. We produce at MC equals MR, we get the price off the demand curve. Now, profit maximization, MC equals MR. This is going to stay true no matter what. We produce at MC equals MR, we get our quantity, our profit maximizing quantity. So marginal revenue is going to be lower than price. It doesn't equal price like it does in a perfectly competitive model. We get the price from the demand curve. We produce at profit maximizing quantity, but get the price from the demand curve. Price is going to be greater than marginal revenue. Now, long-run profits can exist in the monopoly market. This is because of those barriers to entry. So when we see a profit exist in a market, they can hold on to it because other firms cannot get in. Maybe it's the patent, maybe it's the low average total cost, maybe it is the control of all the productive resources, but firms cannot get in to take those profits away. Monopolies always produce in the elastic region of the demand curve. So profit maximizing quantity will always be in the elastic region. We're going to look at an example where we're changing prices to show the changes in revenue, to identify what portion of the curve we're in. At P1, where quantity demanded is Q1. So this is our total revenue here. This is how much we're selling. Let's drop the price down to P2, and this is our new area of total revenue. The red represents the loss to total revenue now. The yellow represents the gains to total revenue, what we've gained in addition to what we had before. So we've gained a lot more than we've lost. Total revenue has increased. Now, Q2 is a unique location because this is the point where marginal revenue goes below zero. And anything beyond this, any drop in price to increase the quantity demanded to try and increase revenue is going to result in a decrease in revenue. So this is the elastic region of the demand curve right here. Total revenue increases as price decreases. As we move further, drop it down to P3, we see blue representing the gains to total revenue. Yellow now represents the loss to total revenue. We've lost a lot more than we've gained. Total revenue has gone down. Anything beyond Q2 in this model is in the inelastic portion of the demand curve because as we decrease price, revenue goes down with it. So the revenue maximizing quantity is right down there at Q2. This comes up on FRQs every so often. Keep that in mind. Monopolies always produce in the elastic portion of the demand curve. Now, monopolies don't always have to make a profit. In the short run, they can experience economic loss. If at the profit maximizing quantity, our ATC is greater than our price, we can experience a loss. Now, they will continue to operate in the short run as long as we're above AVC, but they can have a loss. Monopolies are affected by taxes and subsidies the same way that perfectly competitive markets are. Lump sum subsidies and taxes are going to shift the ATC. It's only going to change profit and loss. It will not affect the output of the firm or the market. So a lump sum tax is going to reduce profits. It's going to shift the ATC curve up. It's going to give us a new ATC at that given profit maximizing quantity of output, and it's going to drop those profits or cause us to go into an economic loss, one or the other. Now, a lump sum subsidy is going to shift that ATC curve down. It's going to give us a lower ATC at profit maximizing and increase those profits or reduce the loss, however it goes. But it doesn't change the quantity or the profit maximizing quantity of output. Now, a per unit subsidy or per unit tax is going to change the output. The per unit subsidy is going to shift our MC curve to the right. It's going to give us a new profit maximizing quantity of output because marginal cost is impacted here. A per unit tax is going to shift the MC curve to the left, and it's going to reduce the quantity of output. It's going to give us a new profit maximizing quantity of output, and it's going to drop the output in the market. Now, unlike the perfectly competitive market, monopolies do not produce at allocative efficiency, especially single price monopolies. They experience deadweight loss. So monopolists produce at MC equals MR. They will have some consumer surplus. There will be some producer surplus, but they don't produce at allocative efficiency. All right, allocative efficiency is where marginal cost equals price, and they are producing at where marginal cost equals marginal revenue, and price is always above marginal revenue. So we got profit maximizing at QM, allocative efficiency at QAE, marginal cost is going to be less than price, so we've got some deadweight loss in this given market. Now, how do we correct for it? How do we get rid of the deadweight loss? Per unit subsidies. Per unit subsidies are going to shift that marginal cost curve to the right. It's going to increase the profit maximizing quantity of output, and it's going to get us to that socially optimal MC equals price aspect. It would, in this case, it increased consumer surplus, but it got us to the allocative efficient quantity. It's quite common that the monopoly model is one you need to draw for an FRQ question. So let's go over the best strategy on how to start drawing this one. Start with your demand curve. All right, draw your demand curve, then we know that the marginal revenue curve goes below it. We've got that under control. Then throw your MC, your upward sloping MC curve in there. We know we produce at MC equals MR, profit maximizing quantity of output always. So then you draw that vertical line right there. You mark your quantity for the market, and then we get our price from our demand curve. And then you draw that over and you get our price for the market there. From this point on, if it says you have a profit, if it says you have a loss, you can draw your ATC curve accordingly, and then throw your ATC and your profits right there. Sometimes they have you shade them in. So far, so good. Another key point of interest is that allocative efficiency, where marginal cost equals price. Where the marginal cost curve intersects the demand curve is where we get allocative efficiency. The difference between the allocative efficiency and the profit maximizing quantity of output is going to be that deadweight loss, that little triangle right there. Now, the other point of interest, where the marginal revenue curve intersects zero, or marginal revenue equals zero, this is revenue maximizing. Anything beyond that, the demand curve is going to be inelastic and total revenue will go down as we drop price. All right, guys, that about sums it up for single price monopolies. Hopefully you got something out of that. In the description below, I've included a worksheet with 4 different monopoly models, having you guys analyze, identify socially optimal outputs, profit maximizing outputs, profits, consumer surplus, all that fun stuff. Everything that you would need from a single price monopoly model. So take a look at that, give it a shot, and then look at the follow-up video going over this worksheet. Also, make sure you're looking at my next video, the price discriminating monopoly video. As always, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.